Commander Zarvex of the Galactic Federation stood rigidly on the command deck of the Indomitable, his four-segmented arms folded in the traditional posture of displeasure. His chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the ship's blue-white illumination, faceted eyes reflecting the holographic displays that surrounded him. Behind him, a dozen Thoraxian officers monitored their stations with perfect synchronicity, their movements precise and identical, as befitted the most disciplined species in the known galaxy. "Explain again," Zarvex said, mandibles clicking, softly, "why we have been assigned a human consultant." Senior Science Officer Zixnar adjusted her thoracic plates nervously. "The High Council was explicit, Commander. The human female has unique expertise regarding the Forgotten Zone. Given our mission parameters, her knowledge is deemed essential." The commander's antennae twitched irritably. Humans are chaotic, undisciplined, and emotionally compromised. Their bodies are fragile, their lifespans absurdly brief, and their cognitive processes are riddled with inefficiencies. He gestured to the view screen where a small transport vessel was approaching the docking bay. "And now we must incorporate one into the most important tactical mission of the cycle." The science officer remained silent, knowing better than to argue with a superior. The Thoraxian military hierarchy had remained unchanged for 12,000 years, and for good reason. "Very well," Zarvex finally said. "Have the human brought to the briefing chamber, and Zixnar, ensure the atmospheric mixers are calibrated for its primitive respiratory needs. I will not have it expire before serving its purpose." 20 minutes later, Commander Zarvex watched with poorly disguised disdain as the human female was escorted into the briefing chamber. She was disappointingly typical of her species, soft-skinned, diminutive, with only 2 arms and legs. Her exoskeleton was completely internal, leaving her vulnerable to even minor impacts. Her head featured an unnecessary abundance of brown filaments, restrained in what appeared to be a ponytail, a term that had always struck Zarvex as bafflingly inappropriate since humans bore no relation to the quadrupedal earth creatures known as ponies. Most disconcerting was her expression. While Thoraxian faces were designed for efficiency and clarity of communication, human faces seemed designed for deception and unpredictability. This one's mouth was currently arranged in what his xenobiology briefings had described as a smile, a gesture that could indicate anything from genuine pleasure to murderous intent. "Dr. Ellie Kwan reporting as requested," she said, performing an awkward approximation of the Thoraxian greeting posture. "It's an honor to be aboard the Indomitable, Commander Zarvex." "Indeed," the commander replied, not bothering to return the gesture. "I am told you possess information about the anomaly in Sector 7 Gamma, colloquially known as the Forgotten Zone." "I've spent the last 6 years studying it," Dr. Kwan said, pulling a small device from her pocket. Several Thoraxian guards immediately raised their weapons, but she seemed oblivious to the threat. "Oh, sorry, just my data pad. May I?" Zarvex waved a dismissive claw, and the guards lowered their weapons as Dr. Kwan activated her device, projecting a holographic map of the sector in question. "The Forgotten Zone isn't just an anomaly," she explained, manipulating the projection with surprising dexterity for a species with only 5 digits per hand. "It's a region of space where the laws of physics are selectively permeable. My team discovered that specific radiation patterns can create temporary pathways through the zone." "This information is already in our database," Zarvex interrupted. "The Federation has been aware of these radiation signatures for 3 cycles. Dr. Kwan's smile didn't falter. "But you haven't been able to maintain stable passage, have you? That's why you need me. My team figured out why your ships keep disappearing." The commander's antennae straightened in surprise. This was not in the briefing. "Explain," he demanded. "The zone requires a guiding consciousness," she said. A mind that can adapt to the changing conditions in real time. Your ship AIs are too rigid, too programmed. The zone. It's almost like it's alive, responding to intention and adaptability. Zixnar stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding protocol. That contradicts all established physical principles. Exactly, Dr. Kwan replied with inexplicable enthusiasm. That's what makes it so fascinating. The zone doesn't just bend physics. It responds to consciousness itself. And humans, well, we're particularly good at adaptive thinking. Zarvex clicked his mandibles in the Thoraxian equivalent of a scoff. You suggest we need human unpredictability to navigate this anomaly, that your chaotic thought patterns are somehow superior to our precision? Not superior, Dr. Kwan corrected, that strange smile still in place. Just different. Sometimes different is exactly what you need. The commander regarded her for a long moment. Very well, human. You will be assigned quarters appropriate to your biological requirements. We enter the outer boundary of the Forgotten Zone in exactly 26 hours. Be prepared to demonstrate your adaptability. As the human was escorted out, Zixnar approached her commander. Do you believe her claims, sir? Irrelevant, Zarvex replied. The High Council has mandated her inclusion. We will utilize her knowledge, but make no mistake. I will not allow a human to endanger this mission or this vessel. Of course, Commander. And Zixnar? Have security monitor her continuously. Humans are known for their creativity, particularly when it comes to creating problems. Dr. Ellie Kwan sat cross-legged on her assigned berth, scrolling through data on her pad while absent-mindedly chewing on a protein bar. Her quarters were Spartan by human standards, but luxurious for a Thoraxian vessel. The insectoid species viewed personal space as inefficient. The room was exactly 3 by 4 meters, with a sleeping platform, sanitation unit, and small workspace. The environmental controls had been set to mimic Earth-standard conditions, though the humidity was slightly higher than she preferred. A chime at her door preceded its immediate opening. Thoraxians didn't believe in waiting for permission to enter after announcing their presence. Dr. Kwan, the science officer Zixnar said, entering with a rigid posture that suggested discomfort. I have been instructed to ensure you understand the protocols for tomorrow's operation. Great, Ellie said, setting aside her datapad. I was hoping to go over a few things myself. Want to sit down? She patted the edge of her berth. The Thoraxian's compound eyes flickered with what might have been confusion. Thoraxians do not sit during operational briefings. Right, of course, Ellie said, standing up and brushing crumbs from her jumpsuit. Efficient posture and all that. So what's the plan? The Indomitable will approach the Forgotten Zone's outer boundary at precisely 0700 hours. You will be stationed on the command deck, where you will provide navigation guidance as needed. The mission objective is to retrieve the data core from the science vessel Implacable, which was lost in the zone 42 standard days ago. Ellie raised an eyebrow. That's it? Just get in, grab the black box, and get out? The Implacable's quantum data core contains irreplaceable research on dark matter propulsion. Its recovery is of highest priority to the Federation. And what happened to the crew? Zixnar's antennae twitched slightly. All hands were lost. Standard recovery protocols were attempted but failed. The Forgotten Zone prevents conventional rescue operations. I'm sorry to hear that, Ellie said, and meant it. I've lost colleagues to the zone myself. It's not an easy place to understand. Understanding is not required for mission success, Zixnar replied. Only compliance with established protocols. Ellie smiled faintly. With all due respect, that's exactly the kind of thinking that gets ships lost in the zone. We need to be prepared to throw the rulebook out the airlock if necessary. The science officer's thoracic plates fluttered in what Ellie had come to recognize as the thoraxian equivalent of indignation. The commander was correct about your species' disturbing casualness toward established procedure. And yet here I am, the human expert you need to complete your mission. Zixnar was silent for a moment, compound eyes unreadable. There is something else you should know, Dr. Kwan. The Implacable was testing a new weapon system when it disappeared. The recovery of this technology is the true purpose of our mission. Ellie's expression grew serious. What kind of weapon? That information is classified, Zixnar said. But I have been authorized to tell you that it harnesses the quantum instability of the Forgotten Zone itself. You're weaponizing the anomaly. Ellie shook her head. That's ambitious, and probably a terrible idea. Your opinion on Federation military strategy is neither required nor welcome, Zixnar said. You will be expected on the command deck at 0630 hours. Do not be late. After the science officer left, Ellie returned to her datapad, but her mind was racing. Weaponizing the Forgotten Zone was exactly the kind of short-sighted thinking that had drawn her to this mission in the first place. The zone wasn't just an anomaly, it was something far more complex and, potentially, far more dangerous than the Thoraxians understood. She pulled up her private notes, encrypted with an algorithm that even the advanced Thoraxian systems wouldn't easily crack. The real question wasn't whether she could guide the Indomitable through the zone. It was whether she should help them retrieve a weapon that could destabilize the entire sector. The command deck of the Indomitable hummed with activity as Ellie stepped through the massive doorway the next morning. Thoraxian officers moved with perfect coordination, their carapaces gleaming under the cool blue lighting. Commander Zarvek stood at the central platform, his forearms manipulating holographic controls with practiced precision. The human arrives, he announced without turning. 2 minutes and 43 seconds ahead of schedule. Unexpected. I'm full of surprises, Ellie replied, approaching the command platform. Besides, I figured punctuality might win me a few points with Thoraxian sensibilities. Your attempt to conform to our standards is noted if unnecessary, the commander said, finally turning to face her. Your station is there. He pointed to a small console next to the navigation officer. You will observe and advise only when instructed. Ellie took her position, noting that the console had been hastily modified for human ergonomics. Have you ever traversed the outer boundary of the zone before, Commander? 3 previous attempts, all unsuccessful. Then you know it begins, with light distortions, colors shifting, sensors giving contradictory readings. The commander's mandibles clicked. We are not ignorant of the zone's effects, human. We have lost 17 vessels to its anomalies. 17? Ellie couldn't hide her surprise. That wasn't in any of the reports I received. The Federation does not broadcast its failures, Zarvek said coldly. Approaching outer boundary. In 5 minutes, all stations prepare for physics variance. The massive view screen showed what appeared to be normal space, stars glittering against the black void. But Ellie knew better. The Forgotten Zone didn't announce itself with dramatic visual effects. Its boundaries were subtle, insidious. Reality didn't so much break as gradually bend until you suddenly realized you were somewhere else entirely. Commander, she said, I recommend reducing power to your primary systems by 30% before we cross the boundary. Zarvex's head swiveled toward her, compound eyes flashing. Reducing power would leave us vulnerable. The zone feeds on energy, Ellie explained. The more power you push through your systems, the more the zone will distort them. Think of it like walking into a strong current. You don't charge in at full speed. The commander stared at her for a long moment, mandibles working silently as if chewing on her words. Finally, he turned to his first officer. "Reduce primary systems to 70% power." "Yes, Commander." The lights dimmed slightly as the ship's massive engines throttled back. The hum of the power systems dropped in pitch, creating an unsettling silence on the command deck. "Outer boundary in 30 seconds, the navigation officer announced. "Watch for the shimmer," Ellie said, leaning forward at her console. "It'll start with the stars at the periphery of your vision." As if on cue, the stars at the edge of the view screen began to waver, their light stretching and compressing like reflections on water. Colors shifted, blues becoming greens, reds deepening to purple, then cycling back again. "Sensor anomalies detected," reported a Thoraxian officer. "Quantum fluctuations increasing by 22%. Gravitational readings unstable." "Maintain course and speed," Commander Zarvex ordered, his voice steady despite the increasingly bizarre readings. Ellie felt it before the instruments could detect it. A subtle shift in her inner ear, as if gravity had momentarily forgotten which way was down. "We're crossing the boundary," she said. "Everyone try to focus on fixed points. The zone plays with perception." The stars on the view screen began to smear, leaving trails of light like long exposure photography. The ship's structural integrity field emitted a low groaning sound that seemed to echo from multiple directions at once. "This is normal," Ellie assured them, noting the growing tension among the Thoraxian crew. "The zone is testing us, seeing how we react." "The zone is not sentient," Zarvex stated flatly. "It is merely a region of space with unstable physical properties." "Maybe," Ellie said, "but it helps to think of it that way. The zone responds to intention and expectation. If you expect trouble, we will get trouble," the commander finished. A surprisingly mystical perspective from a scientist. "Sometimes good science looks like mysticism until we understand it," Ellie replied, watching her console as reality continued to bend around the ship. Arthur C. Clarke, human philosopher. "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." "We have successfully crossed the outer boundary," the navigation officer announced, entering the forgotten zone proper. The view screen now showed a space that only vaguely resembled normal reality. Stars pulsed and swirled in patterns that hurt the eyes to follow. Distant nebulae took on impossible colors, shifting between spectrums with dizzying speed. Space itself seemed to fold and unfold like origami in the hands of an unseen creator. "Begin scanning for the implacable signature," Zarvex ordered. "Maintain reduced power to primary systems." Ellie studied her console, which was displaying a real-time analysis of the zone's fluctuations. "Commander, I'm detecting a pattern in the quantum variations. It's like waves on a pond rippling outward from a central point." "The implacable?" "Possibly. Or whatever happened to it." She manipulated her controls, highlighting a region of space that appeared empty on the view screen, but glowed with complex mathematical patterns on her display. "I recommend we head in this direction. Follow the ripples to their source." Zarvex considered this for only a moment before nodding to his navigation officer. "Set course as the human suggests. 1/4 impulse power." The Indomitable turned gracefully, its massive hull responding instantly to the navigation commands. As they moved deeper into the zone, the distortions grew more pronounced. Light bent at impossible angles, creating prismatic cascades across the view screen. Occasionally, objects would appear and disappear, phantom debris, ghostly planets, even what looked like other starships, there and gone in an instant. "What are we seeing?" one of the junior officers asked, their disciplined composure slipping for the first time. Echoes, Ellie explained. The zone exists partially outside normal space-time. We're seeing possibilities, things that might have been or might yet be. Don't focus on them too much. 30 kilometers to the focal point of the disturbance, the navigation officer reported. Sensors are detecting something, but readings are inconsistent. Ellie leaned forward, squinting at the view screen. There, she said, pointing to what appeared to be a shimmer in the chaotic void. Magnify that section. The view screen zoomed in, and there it was, the Implacable, or what remained of it. The Thoraxian science vessel hung motionless in space, its hull intact but strangely distorted. Parts of the ship seemed to phase in and out of existence, while other sections appeared frozen in multiple positions simultaneously, creating a blurred, ghostly effect. Quantum state uncertainty on a macro scale, Ellie murmured. The ship exists, in multiple states at once. Is the crew alive? Zixnar asked, approaching Ellie's station. Ellie shook her head. In that state? They couldn't be. At least not in any way we'd recognize as life. Their consciousness would be spread across multiple quantum states, unable to coalesce into a unified experience. Then we focus on the data core, Commander Zarvek said. And the weapon prototype, can we dock with the vessel? I wouldn't recommend it, Ellie said. The quantum instability could spread to the Indomitable. Better to use remote retrieval. Drones or tractor beams. Prepare a retrieval drone, the commander ordered. Configure it for maximum quantum shielding. As the crew rushed to comply, Ellie continued studying the readings from the Implacable. Something wasn't right. The quantum ripples weren't emanating from the ship itself, but from something inside it, something that was still active. Commander, she said slowly, I think the weapon prototype is still operational. Zarvex turned sharply. Explain. These energy patterns, she said, transferring her display to the main view screen. They're too regular, too structured to be natural quantum decay. Something is generating them, and given what we know about the Implacable's mission, the prototype has activated, Zixnar finished, her scientific mind quickly processing the implications, but without a crew to control it. It could be in an unstable feedback loop, Ellie concluded, drawing energy from the zone itself and amplifying the quantum distortions. Commander Zarvex's compound eyes flashed with what might have been concern, an emotion Ellie hadn't seen in the rigid Thoraxian before. Can it be shut down remotely? Possibly, Ellie said, but we'd need to know exactly how it works. What kind of weapon are we talking about? How does it interface with the zone? The commander and science officer exchanged glances, a surprisingly human gesture for the insectoid aliens. The prototype is a quantum phase disruptor, Zixnar finally said. It was designed to create localized pockets of quantum uncertainty, rendering enemy ships and installations functionally non-existent. Ellie stared at them in disbelief. You developed a weapon that erases things from reality, and then tested it in the one region of space where reality is already unstable? What could possibly go wrong? Your sarcasm is noted, Dr. Kwan, Zarvek said coldly, but unhelpful in the current situation. Can you assist in deactivating the prototype or not? Ellie took a deep breath, pushing down her frustration. I need to see the weapon's specifications, and quickly. Those quantum ripples are intensifying. Zixnar transferred the classified files to Ellie's console. As she read through them, her expression grew increasingly troubled. This design, she muttered. It's not just tapping into quantum uncertainty. It's creating a self-sustaining feedback loop with the fundamental fabric of space-time. She looked up at the commander. It's like you built a quantum black hole, but instead of consuming matter, it consumes probability itself. Can it be deactivated? Zarvex pressed. Not remotely, Ellie said. The system is designed to be isolated from external signals, a security measure to prevent enemy tampering. Someone will need to go aboard the Implacable and manually shut it down. The command deck fell silent. Even for the disciplined Thoraxians, the prospect of boarding a ship caught in quantum flux was sobering. I'll go, Ellie said, standing up from her console. Unacceptable, Zarvex replied immediately. You are a civilian consultant not trained for hazardous operations. I'm also the only one who properly understands the zone, Ellie countered. Your Thoraxian minds are too structured. The zone will tear apart anyone who can't adapt to its contradictions. I've studied this phenomenon for years. I know how to think in quantum possibilities. The human has a point, Commander, Zixnar interjected. Our species' neural architecture is optimized for order and consistency. The zone's chaotic nature is particularly challenging for Thoraxian cognition. The commander's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of intense internal calculation. You would risk your life to deactivate a weapon your kind wasn't even meant to know about? I'd risk my life to prevent that thing from creating a runaway quantum cascade that could consume this entire sector, Ellie corrected. Besides, I didn't come all this way just to sit at a console and give directions. After a moment's hesitation, Zarvex nodded. Very well. But you will not go alone. I will accompany you. Commander, Zixnar protested. Protocol explicitly forbids. I am aware of protocol, Science Officer, Zarvex interrupted. But this mission is too important to delegate. Prepare an assault shuttle with quantum shielding. Dr. Kwan and I will board the Implacable and deactivate the prototype. You will assume command until our return. 20 minutes later, Ellie found herself sealed in a Thoraxian environmental suit standing in the shuttle bay beside Commander Zarvex. The assault shuttle was small but formidable, a sleek black craft with reinforced hull plating and advanced stealth systems. The suits will provide limited protection against quantum flux, Zarvex explained as they boarded. But time will be critical. We locate the prototype, deactivate it, retrieve the data core, and withdraw immediately. Understood, Ellie said, settling into the co-pilot seat. The controls were designed for Thoraxian physiology, with interfaces for multiple limbs, but she could still monitor the readouts. Though I should warn you, time might not behave the way you expect once we're aboard the Implacable. The commander gave her a sidelong glance as he activated the shuttle's systems. Explain. Quantum uncertainty at that level affects temporal flow. Seconds might stretch into minutes or hours might pass in an instant. We'll need to stay focused on our objective, not on how long it seems to be taking. Thoraxians are not easily distracted, Zarvex assured her, guiding the shuttle out of the bay and into the swirling chaos of the Forgotten Zone. The short journey to the Implacable was disorienting. The zone's distortion seemed to intensify around the stricken vessel, creating a kaleidoscopic maelstrom of light and shadow. The shuttle's sensors struggled to maintain a lock on their target, which appeared to simultaneously exist in multiple locations, separated by mere meters. Aim for the central image, Ellie advised. The others are quantum echoes, possibilities, not actualities. Zarvex adjusted their course, his four hands moving with incredible precision across the controls. The docking port appears intact, he noted as they approached. Initiating magnetic coupling. The shuttle shuddered as it connected with the Implacable. Warning indicators flashed across the console. The quantum distortions were already affecting their systems. We need to move quickly, Ellie said, checking the seal on her helmet. The prototype is likely in the main research lab, Deck 3 according to the ship schematics. Affirmative. Zarvex stood, his environmental suit making his already imposing figure even more massive. Stay behind me, human. The implacable may contain hazards beyond quantum distortion. They cycled through the airlock and stepped onto the implacable. Immediately, Ellie knew something was deeply wrong. The corridor before them seemed to stretch and contract with each step, the walls rippling like fabric in a breeze. Lights flickered, in patterns that hurt the eyes, creating strobing shadows that moved independently of any visible source. "This is unexpected," Zarvek said, his voice tight with what might have been the Thoraxian equivalent of concern. "The quantum distortions are affecting our perception," Ellie explained, fighting the vertigo that threatened to overwhelm her. "Remember, the ship is still physically intact. It's reality itself that's uncertain here." They moved forward, carefully, each step requiring conscious effort as the floor seemed to shift beneath their feet. Occasionally they would glimpse shadowy figures in the distance, echoes of the crew perhaps caught in temporal loops or alternate quantum states. "Do not focus on the apparitions," Zarvex warned. "They are not real." "They're real," Ellie corrected. "Just not in our current quantum state." They reached a junction where 3 corridors met at impossible angles, seeming to fold into each other like an Escher drawing. Zarvex consulted a holographic map projected from his suit's gauntlet. "The research lab should be ahead," he said, though ahead had become a questionable concept in this twisted space. "I can feel it," Ellie said, extending her hand into the distorted air. "The prototype. It's creating ripples we can physically sense." Following her intuition, they chose a corridor that sometimes appeared to curve upward at a 90-degree angle, though their boots remained firmly attached to the floor. The quantum distortions grew more intense as they progressed, until they reached a sealed door marked with Thoraxian warning symbols. "This is it," Zarvex confirmed. "Stand back while I override the security protocols." As the commander worked on the door controls, Ellie studied their surroundings. The quantum ripples were emanating from behind the door in pulsating waves, each one slightly stronger than the last. Whatever the prototype was doing, it was building toward something. "Commander, we need to hurry. I think the device is approaching some kind of critical threshold." Zarvex's mandibles clicked in acknowledgement as the door finally slid open, revealing the research lab beyond. The space within defied conventional geometry. Equipment floated in mid-air, frozen in multiple positions simultaneously. In the center of the room hovered what could only be the prototype, a spherical device about the size of a basketball, composed of interlocking rings that rotated in different directions at once, surrounding a core of pulsating energy that seemed to exist partly in this reality and partly somewhere else. "Fascinating," Ellie breathed, momentarily forgetting the danger. "It's creating a controlled quantum singularity." "Focus, human," Zarvex said sharply. "How do we deactivate it?" Ellie tore her gaze from the hypnotic device and scanned the lab. "There should be a control console." The schematics indicated a manual override sequence. They found the console on the far side of the lab, though far side was a relative term in a space where distance itself was becoming arbitrary. The console displayed Thoraxian script that flickered and changed even as they watched. "The quantum flux is affecting the system itself," Zarvex said, his voice tight with frustration. "I cannot input the deactivation sequence if the interface keeps changing." Ellie studied the prototype again, noticing how the ripples of distortion synchronized with her own thoughts. An idea began to form, crazy, dangerous, but possibly their only option. "I think I know why your previous missions failed," she said slowly. "You've been trying to fight the zone's nature instead of working with it. This isn't just about physics. It's about consciousness, perception, the observer effect on a massive scale." "What are you suggesting?" Zarvex asked, compound eyes fixed on her. The prototype responds to conscious observation. It's not just measuring quantum states. It's creating them based on expectation. She took a deep breath. I need to approach it directly. If I can synchronize my consciousness with its fluctuations, I might be able to guide it toward a stable state. That is not in the protocol, Zarvex stated flatly, and likely suicidal. We're past protocols, Commander. Ellie began removing her gloves despite the warning indicators on her suit. Quantum entanglement works through direct contact. I need to feel the fields myself. Before Zarvex could stop her, Ellie stepped toward the prototype, bare hands extended. The quantum ripples intensified around her, reality bending and folding in response to her proximity. She could feel the device's energy washing over her, probing her consciousness, measuring her quantum state. What are you doing? Zarvex demanded, reaching for her with one of his forearms. Trust me, Ellie said, her voice strange and distant. This is what humans do best. Improvise. She reached out and placed her hands on the prototype's outer ring. Immediately, the chaotic fluctuations around them seemed to pause, as if reality itself was holding its breath. The rotating rings slowed, aligning with each other in a new configuration. It's recognizing me, Ellie whispered. It's trying to make sense of my quantum signature. Through her connection with the device, she could sense its purpose more clearly. It wasn't just a weapon. It was an attempt to harness the fundamental nature of reality itself, to control the uncontrollable. The Thoraxians had created something they couldn't possibly understand, a tool that operated on principles beyond their rigid, ordered minds. Commander, she said, her voice growing stronger. I think I can redirect its function, but I need you to retrieve the data core while I maintain this connection. Zarvex hesitated, clearly torn between protocol and necessity. Finally, he nodded. Where is the core located? Central computer hub, directly below us, Ellie said, somehow knowing this without being told. Her connection to the prototype was giving her access to the ship's systems, to information she couldn't possibly have known. Hurry. I don't know how long I can maintain this state. As the commander moved to a hatch in the floor, Ellie focused, her attention on the prototype. Its energy was flowing through her now, using her consciousness as a conduit, a framework for understanding the chaotic nature of the zone. She could feel it trying to impose order on quantum uncertainty, exactly the wrong approach in this place. You can't control chaos, she whispered to the device. You can only channel it. Guided by intuition and her years of studying the zone, Ellie began to mentally redirect the prototype's function. Instead of fighting against quantum uncertainty, she encouraged it to embrace it, to work with the zone's nature rather than against it. The pulsating core began to change color, shifting from an angry red to a cool blue.